Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for presentation of Life Sounds Good with Jessica Toews. I'm honored to have Jessica tonight. Her doctor, you might know and remember, he presented a webinar back in September, Dr. Ravi Samy. So if you haven't watched that, you're in for a bonus because you get now a patient and a surgeon's perspective. So it's very interesting. It's come full circle. And we also have, and I want to point out that Barbara Chertok, a longtime HLAA member, is in the audience tonight. And she wrote about Jessica's story in the current issue of Hearing Life. So if you haven't received that yet, you should be any day. It's also available as a digital magazine online from our website. So thank you for joining us tonight, Jess. And also a thank you to Whitney Riley, who is providing captions this evening. And we're trying something new with the captions, so I think that you'll agree that this is way better than our previous experience in Zoom. I'm going to go ahead and let you get started. If you're presenting and people are having questions, you're thinking of questions you'd like to ask Jessica, just click on that Q&A at the bottom of your screen and type in your question. When she's finished, I'll go ahead and voice those questions to her so that becomes part of our transcript. I'll let you take it away from here, Jess.
Okay. Well, first, I need to say happy birthday to my daughter because today she is 11. And so she's having a big celebration at church tonight. So that's good for her. Anyway, so my name is Jess, and I'm 37 years old, and I've been married to Tim for almost 15 years. We live in a small town of Winchester, Kentucky. It's just east of Lexington, so we're UK fans. We're parents to Marley and Nadia. We have a dog, 5 cats, 2 hermit crabs, and some chickens. That's the one that people kind of laugh at, like that's random chickens. Anyway, I feel like I'm just an ordinary, regular, normal person. However, I do have a slight obsession with socks, and I love socks. I believe that you cannot have a bad day when you're wearing crazy socks. When your feet are having a party, like really, how do you have a bad day when your feet are partying? And so the crazier the socks, the better it is for me. I don't know. I don't own white socks. It's just a fun thing I've started. But I never, ever, ever thought that my obsession with socks would be part of my story and my journey and such a huge part of that. So I grew up in a really, really, really small town in eastern Kentucky. It's called Louisa. There's probably like 1,200 people there total. I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters. Just normal everyday family. I grew up extremely healthy. In fact, I never missed a day of school from the time I started kindergarten until the time I graduated high school. Not a single day of school missed. In fact, I can probably count on one hand how many times I probably went to the doctor when I was younger. Just I was not a sick child. We were just healthy. So I graduated from high school, went to college at Morehead State University. It's kind of in between Winchester and Louisa. It's just a small school. There, I became active in the Baptist campus ministry on campus, and I met my husband, Tim, there. He wasn't my husband then, but I met Tim there. We started going to the BSU together, and that's where I met Jesus. I was saved at the BSU my sophomore year in college. So immediately, Tim and I started volunteering in the children's ministry at our church at Grace Baptist Church here in Winchester. Soon after, Tim proposed to me. We got married the Saturday after I graduated from college because my parents said, we are not paying for a wedding if you don't graduate college first. So I said, that's fine. I got a great idea. I'll graduate one Saturday, get married the next. And so Tim and I moved to Winchester. I started working as a teller at the bank. We're just living our life. We bought our house, still just healthy. No problems, just living the American dream, basically. In 2009, I began having a really, really, really bad headache, is what I kind of explained it as. It was probably like a Charlie horse in my brain. Normally, if you get them in your leg, you can rub them out, but I could not get this rubbed out. So I went to the doctor several times, and so there was always, she was, Jess, you are perfectly healthy. There's, you probably have a sinus infection. And so at the same time, I kind of noticed that my hearing on the left side, it was kind of like I was in a barrel or talking underwater, like everybody was under the water. And so she just, you probably have a sinus infection. No, we took antibiotics. Well, then you probably have an ear infection. There looks like a little fluid in there. And so, this entire time I already had an instinct that there was something there. You always think the worst when you have horrible pain, like automatically, it's a brain tumor, or it's this. And so I'd already convinced myself and already knew that there was something wrong. So finally, we convinced the doctor to let me have an MRI. And so she was like, all right, fine, but there's not going to be anything there. You're healthy. That's it. You just have this headache. And so we did the MRI, and the very next day she called and she said, Jess, you have to come to my office, and you have to come immediately. Don't come by yourself because I have your MRI results. And automatically I said to her, there's something there, isn't there? And she was, I don't want to discuss this on the phone. And so Tim and I went to her office the next day and saw the MRI. And I think there's a slide there for it. The MRI showed that I had bilateral acoustic neuromas. You can see the big white circle. That was the largest one. And then there's a little small one over on the other side. Acoustic neuromas grow on the auditory nerves and so you can see I definitely had something in my head. And so I decided to name my tumor Bertha, because if you're going to have a tumor in your head, it might as well have a name. You can see her hanging out there. We were referred to some doctors in the state of Kentucky, and finally someone diagnosed me with neurofibromatosis. NF2 is what it's commonly known as. October the 7th of 2009, actually. NF2 is a genetic disorder. It causes tumors to grow and form on nerve tissues throughout the body. And the tumors can grow anywhere there's nerves, but mainly they grow in the spine, the brain, optic nerves. They are not cancerous tumors, and they just like to cause a lot of problems. People with NF2, it comes with an entire list, basically, of symptoms and problems, balance, dysfunction. People have swallowing problems, blindness, deafness. It's a really scary genetic condition. Currently, there is no cure for it. Doctors treat the symptoms, but there's no cure. So this is something, if you have NF2, you will have it for the rest of your life. So several doctors around Kentucky looked at this MRI and they said, you know what, it has to come out. This is pressing on your brainstem. You are basically a ticking time bomb. However, after about 5 doctors, everyone said, we can't help you. This is too risky. I don't want to do this surgery. I'm too afraid to mess this up. It's the location of it. We can't bother it. And I'll say, you don't know what it feels like to be a 25-year-old girl. And the doctors who are supposed to fix you won't do it or are too afraid. Basically, I was a ticking time bomb, just waiting to meet my maker. But I am a child of God, and I knew that no matter what happened, God was going to take care of me. I took one day, and I cried a lot, actually. I was mad. I was scared. And then I woke up the next day and said, this is what I've been given. What are we going to do about it? How do I keep living like this? What's the best way that I can still function? And so my husband and I I just went to work. We continued serving in our children's ministry, just waiting for the plan that, all right, what's next? And so my mom didn't take no for an answer. So she decided to take her skills to Google, and she found an NF2 specialist, but it was at the House Ear Institute in Los Angeles, California. Honestly, I didn't think this high-profile doctor in California is going to want anything to do with little Jess Toews from Winchester, Kentucky. But my mom insisted we try, so we contacted him, and he agreed, Dr. Brackman, he agreed he would review my MRIs and see what his recommendations would be. And so we waited about 3 weeks, and Dr. Brackman called and basically said, all right, it's time. Get on an airplane. I'm going to take this thing out. I'm going to help you. But then we encountered another problem because I'm 25 years old. I do not have the funds to hop on an airplane and go have surgery in Los Angeles, California. They said recovery will take about anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks in the hospital, and then I was going to have to learn to walk. There's all these complications that could happen, and so financially we were not ready. We were not prepared. Like, all right, what are we going to do for this? But God had a plan. He took care of us. Our church took up a love offering. People in our community, in our family, and people in other communities, people I've never met in my entire life, people who just heard my story, started donating to our fund. And so on November the 15th of 2009, we hopped on an airplane and we went to California, and we had absolutely, positively no idea what was going to happen. So Dr. Brackman explained when we got there that he could remove the tumor. He would take care of Bertha, but when he removed the tumor, I was going to be deaf on the left side. Because of the location of the tumor, they had to cut the auditory nerve. And so when I woke up, there would be no hearing. However, at the time, the House Ear Institute had done some implants of an auditory brainstem implant. And so Dr. Brackman explained that I was a candidate for that. And so we could just get that implant put in there when they took the tumor out. It wasn't going to be a big deal. We'll just do it all at one time. He explained, the ABI is not going to restore your natural hearing by any means, but it will help you. And so we're ready to go. Surgery was scheduled for November the 18th. I had just had a birthday, so it was a great birthday present. That's what I tell everybody who gets to have brain surgery for their birthday, but it was me. So the procedure was going to take about 16 hours. I would be in the hospital for about 3 weeks. Unfortunately, as they rolled me into the operating room, Dr. Brackman let me know that insurance had denied the coverage for the ABI. Because I was still going to have hearing on my right side, the insurance company said, this is not medically necessary. We're not going to pay for this. And here you go. I kissed my husband goodbye. And I was honestly at complete peace with whatever happened. In fact, my last words to him were, no matter what happens to me in this room, I'm okay. If I die, I'm okay. If I live, I'm okay. And of course, I love you. I was honestly ready for whatever was going to happen. So after the longest nap I think I've ever taken in my life, I woke up in the ICU, and I had a fancy new head wrap and a craving for tacos and a chocolate milkshake. There you go. Dr. Brackman and his team had removed Bertha, but they took the hearing on the left side. With the help of physical therapy and lots and lots and lots of determination, I broke all the rules. I was released from the hospital 4 days after my surgery. You can see in one of the pictures on the screen there, on day 2 after surgery, I was up walking the hallways, just like nothing had ever happened. You can see I had a nice new haircut and a nice addition of the scar there. But there were 0 complications. I woke up they had to cut the balance nerve on the left side, and I woke up and could walk just normal. I didn't need any physical therapy, actually. They came and walked me down the hallway like 2 or 3 times, and it was like, okay, that's it. She's good. Like, we don't understand how we just did this $16 brain surgery and you are walking and talking and goofing off just like nothing ever happened. And so they released me from the hospital, but they were not let me fly home yet, just in case we had complications. And so 1 week after brain surgery, I went to Disneyland. I didn't ride any rides because I was a little iffy about that. But my husband and I, we went to Disneyland. We went to the LA Zoo. It was Christmas time, so we got to go to the Hollywood Christmas parade. And after the stitches came out, probably, I think it was about 10 days, the stitches came out, and Dr. Brackman said, there's no reason for you to stay here any longer. Go home. And so we hopped on a plane and came back home. And honestly, we came home and jumped right back into our life, just like nothing ever happened. The only way that even I myself could tell that I'd even had this surgery is that I was deaf on the left side, which to me, I was just lucky. And so thankful that I was even alive. So the deafness, like, who cares, whatever, bring it on. So NF2 is a genetic condition, so there is a risk of passing it on to future generations. And Tim and I decided that was not a risk that we were willing to take. And so in 2011, we became foster parents. If you want to talk about an emotional roller coaster, it's foster parenting. On February 11th of 2011, we received our first foster children. And at that time, in 2011, my hearing had started to decrease on the right side because of the tumors. So we received these foster children, and I did not have 100% hearing. In fact, about that time, it was probably less than 50% hearing. So when you are trying to take in these kids who've been in horrible situations, and then I myself can't really hear what they're saying, it just became a giant frustration, if you will. However, Tim and I knew this is what God planned for us. Like, we knew, all right. And so we started lip reading. I began learning a little bit of sign language. And so the kids and I learned together how to communicate. Around that same time, I needed a doctor for NF2. And because it's such a rare condition, there's not many in this area who know much about it. We were put in contact with someone at the National Institutes of Health. And so I became part of the natural history study there for NF2. And while I was in that study, another study came open. It was a pediatric study, and they were going to try a pediatric drug. It was a drug for patients with NF2, but it was for pediatric patients. And so I was like, I mean, obviously I'm a little bit older than a child, and so this isn't going to work. But however, they decided they would make an exception for me. And so I joined this drug trial at the National Institute of Health. And every 21 days, I would fly to Bethesda, Maryland, and receive an infusion of a trial drug. I was the only adult in this entire pediatric trial. And so I could hop on an airplane in the morning in Lexington. I would get my infusion in Bethesda and fly back home, pick up my kids from daycare, in time to go home and eat dinner. And I have no explanation for why I didn't have any side effects with this drug. There's no explanation as to how it all worked out the way it did. But as a person of faith, I knew God had directed this, and He provided this path. Here I am. While on the drug trial, the tumor shrank and my hearing started to increase. So it was extremely favorable results. However, with drug trials, they end. And the next MRI showed that my tumor had started to grow again. And again, I started noticing a decrease in the hearing. The closest NF doctor was in Cincinnati, at Cincinnati Children's Hospital. That's the one I was put in contact with. And so I met with Trent Hummel. Yes, once again, I am an adult in a pediatric hospital. I don't know how it happens, but it did. I got the opportunity while at Cincinnati Children's to receive 28 doses of Avastin. It's a chemo drug used for NF patients. And every single time I had a treatment, I wore my crazy socks, and I had some Skyline chili afterwards. So if you're from the Cincinnati area, you know what I'm talking about. It's the best chili ever. So I'm not sure if it was my socks, if it was the Skyline chili, or if it was actually the Avastin, but my tumor started shrinking, and I had favorable results in hearing tests. However, eventually the Avastin stopped working. I decided I did not want to travel 2 hours every 14 days. 2 hours there, 2 hours back home. I was missing out on things with my kids. My body, honestly, was tired. And so I talked to the treatment team, and I talked to Dr. Hummel, and I said, you know what? I just want to quit. Like, what's going to happen? Can we just take a break and see what happens? And so we're like, okay, you know, it's your choice. You do what you need to do. So after we stopped, my hearing took a drastic change. And one morning I woke up completely deaf. That's very, very frustrating. When you go to your school, your kids' school, and you can't hear them in their school programs. You see their little mouths moving, and but there's nothing. And so it's really hard when your daughter says, "Hey, Mom, did you like that song?" And so, oh yeah, it was beautiful. But really, I had no idea what it sounded like. I could no longer talk on the phone. I could not order food in a drive-thru. I could not driving in the car with the kids in the back seat. I couldn't hear a word they say, nothing. And so I had learned to lip read. And so we started communicating just by lip reading, and I just have to see it. But I will say there is absolutely nothing like dead silence, especially when you know what it is to hear. You've heard sounds before, and then it's gone. And so I will say not one time did I ever question why or ask, hey, God, why did you do this to me? Because I realize it's all part of the plan. It's going to be fine. It'll be all right. And so again, just take a day about it, cry, get it over with, get up the next morning and say, let's move on. And that's what happened. And so I never quit my job. I was still working at a bank with no hearing. I volunteered at my kids' school, no hearing. We still served in our church's children's ministry, no hearing. In February of 2016, my job was eliminated due to a bank merger. And I will say, I believe it was God's perfect timing. My health had started to decrease, and without my hearing, I could not find a job in the financial industry anymore. Every place I tried, obviously they're not going to say, oh, we can't hire you because you're deaf. But usually a qualification to workplaces is you have to be able to talk on the phone. And if you can't communicate on a phone, I'm not going to tell you we're not hiring you for that, but it was pretty obvious. So at this point, Tim and I just really started to pray really hard. All right, God, what's the next step? where do we go from here? Do I need to try the Avastin again? Do we look for another doctor? What is it that we should do? And so I remembered about the ABI. And so I was referred to Dr. Samy at the University of Cincinnati because the UC hospital had started doing the ABI surgeries there. And so I will say getting another doctor who didn't know about my situation or didn't know about NF2, or somebody who was just going to say, you know what, I can't help you, wasn't really on my list of, hey, let's do this items. However, Tim and I prayed about it. We made the appointment at Dr. Samy's office, and the day of our appointment, Dr. Samy walks into the office, and the very first thing I say to him, this was not planned, this was not in any way, I don't know, it just came out, I guess. I just said, Dr. Samy, could you please raise up your pant legs so I could see your socks? And so when he raised up his pant legs, and when I saw those jelly bean socks, I knew I was in the right spot. In fact, honestly, I don't think I could tell you a single word that he said to me that day, because after I saw those socks, nothing else mattered at all. So Tim kind of was there, so he was filling me in later on what was happening, because I honestly was just like, you know what? He has on jelly bean socks. He can do whatever he wants. Like, I don't care. Whatever he says, that's what we're doing. And so Dr. Samy agreed that the ABI was good. We could try it. We were going to get it approved. But he suggested in the meantime that I could get a cochlear implant for the right side, because I still had all the internal ears, everything internally in my ear was still there. It was still functioning. Everything was fine. And so it was the first time that anybody in my 8 years since the tumor was found, and 8 years since the decrease of my tumor, that anybody had ever even mentioned a cochlear implant to me. Everyone else seemed to be just more focused on the tumor side of NF2 and not the hearing side. And so after some testing, it was determined that, yeah, I was a candidate for a cochlear implant. However, because the tumor was still there on the right side, Dr. Samy suggested that I should have radiation to shrink the tumor. And so in November, for my 35th birthday, I get all these awesome gifts for my birthday. Nobody else in the world has this, right? So on 35th birthday, I get to have radio surgery. I will say, being strapped down to a table, wearing a skin-tight face mask, while a laser beam is being shot at your head, was not my idea of a great birthday present. However, it wasn't really as bad as it sounds. It's just lay there and the laser beam does its thing and get up and go home. So on February the 27th, Dr. Samy completed my cochlear implant surgery, and I made sure he was wearing fun socks. In fact, that was my only stipulation of any surgery that he wanted to do, was if you're going to cut my head open, you have to wear fun socks in the operating room. Okay, he said, whatever you need, Jess, whatever you need. I didn't want to be disappointed on activation day, because I knew there was a chance a cochlear implant's not going to work. just like every medical device, you know, nothing is 100%. And so because I was already deaf, I'd come to terms with this. This is the way it's going to be. If it works, great. If it doesn't, that's all right too. And so I had convinced myself probably that I was never going to hear again. On March the 8th of 2017, I got to hear my kids talk for the first time. And there are not words that I can say, that I can explain to you what it feels like to be able to hear your kids. Because honestly, in all the time that we had them, I'd never heard their voice loud and clear. I mean, I could understand that they were talking and I kind of have the little sensation that they were talking, but I'd never really heard my children talk. And you can still, I get so emotional because I'm so blessed to have the opportunity to hear them. So at a follow-up appointment with Dr. Samy, he says, "Hey, Jess, you remember that ABI we talked about that one time?" And I was like, "Well, yeah." And he said, "Still interested in that?" And I was like, "Well, I mean, honestly, I don't care. I mean, you can do whatever you want. We've already discussed this. I'm on board. I trust you. I know that you are looking out for my best interest. And so if you think the ABI is good for us, let's do it." And so my stipulation was, you need to wear crazy socks again. And 2, you have to do the surgery this year because I've already paid my deductible for my insurance. And so basically this is going to be a free surgery. With the cochlear implant, with the cost of it, with the insurance, we met the deductible with that. So the ABI surgery was, bam, I don't care, sure, let's do it. And so the Dr. Samy's team worked and they got insurance to approve the ABI this time. And so on August the 4th of the same year, it was just 8 months, I think, after my cochlear implant, then Dr. Samy and I met in the operating room once again. And this time, Dr. Zuccarello joined us for some fun times. I say we, but it wasn't we. They did everything. I will say they brought me these funny socks and these hospital leggings they were supposed to wear in the operating room. And I was like, sure. And so they think it's funny. I think if you go to the next slide, you'll see this. Right there. And so we get into the operating room and I pulled my sheet off my legs and I was like, before we start, I need to show you something. And they were like, "Jess, what is it?" And so I pulled that sheet off and I had those chicken leg socks on, and that just set the tone for the whole surgery. Basically everybody was laughing. We were having a good time. Do the countdown. I go to sleep. They, Dr. Samy and Dr. Zuccarello said my surgery was perfect. Absolutely nothing could have gone better. They tested the device, the auditory brainstem implant. They tested it during the surgery. It had a response rate, everything. Amen. Everything is perfect. Close me up. Let's go. And so again, I had a long brain surgery on a Friday, and I was back home on Monday, just hanging out. So I am going to make a confession that honestly, I was in the brainstem implant surgery this time because I thought, I am just being helpful to the surgeons. I am like a guinea pig, basically. Let's let them learn how to do this surgery. I've been deaf on the left side for 8 years. There's absolutely no way that I'm going to hear again on that side. It's been 8 years, so we'll just let the hospital team have this fun time. Learning opportunity is, basically what it was. It was a free surgery for me. So aside from that nice number 7 scar on the back of my head, no problems at all. So unlike a cochlear implant, the auditory brainstem implant has to be activated in the hospital. And so you are admitted into the hospital. I think it was the PICU, whatever. And because the brainstem implant, because it stimulates the brainstem directly, and so you have to be monitored in case your body has any kind of reaction whatsoever. You're there in the hospital, you got a whole team ready to fix whatever needs to be fixed. All right, so I'm here, we're ready. I convinced myself it's been 8 years since there's been sound on that side. It's not going to happen. And so that first beep that I heard scared me. In fact, I became so overcome with emotion. Like I couldn't explain to anyone in the room even what was happening. People were like, Jess, are you hurt? Is something happening? Is your, and the only thing that I could do was cry, because it worked. And so, honestly, I don't think there was a dry eye in the whole room. It's just everyone was so emotionally involved and just super excited that I had surround sound. And so, like I said, the ABI and the cochlear implant are 2 completely different devices. Although each of them works different internally. Externally, you can see they look exactly the same. I am going to say that with my cochlear implant on the right side, at my last hearing test, I had a 98% word recognition score for sentences, which is, I've been told, better than like a normal person's hearing. And so for someone who thought they were never, ever going to hear again, 98% is amazing. So the ABI side, lots of people ask me all the time, all right, so tell us what it's like, let's hear about it. The ABI is more for environmental sounds. And so if I were only wearing my ABI, which is the right side, the left side, if I were only wearing the ABI, I would not be able to understand speech. However, if someone were to walk into the room, or there was an alarm going off, or someone shuts a door, I could hear that just fine. It stimulates the brainstem, and so it's kind of a feeling and a hear a noise at the same time. It's quite amazing, actually. And a lot of people ask, why do I have both? Why do you need both? If you have the cochlear implant and you can hear speech with that, then why did you need an auditory brainstem implant? And that's a good question, because with NF2, and because I still have a tumor on the cochlear implant side, if that tumor continues to grow or decides it wants to do something crazy, or a new tumor decides to grow on the auditory nerve, and I need surgery, the cochlear implant is not going to work any longer. And because a cochlear implant needs it stimulates your cochlear. It stimulates the auditory nerve, and the auditory nerve sends the stimulation to your brainstem to work. I'll say I really don't understand how it all works because I'm not a doctor. I don't have a medical degree. So Dr. Samy is the one for that, or any ENT. He just happens to be my favorite. And so if I were to ever need surgery on this side and the implant needed to be removed, then I still have the ABI. And because I have both of them together, working together, that eventually, and with a lot of practice and over time, my brain is going to learn that those signals from the ABI are speech. And so I have gotten now, it's been a year and a half almost, I think. I have gotten so that if I am looking at someone, I can lip read with my ABI and it works perfect. I'm not going to say it's seamless and it's like normal hearing, but the two of them working together, lip reading with the ABI, if I ever needed to lose my cochlear implant or needed to be gone because of NF2 reasons, I could still communicate with people with the ABI. And so I'm going to say that my journey has provided amazing opportunities. I mean, honestly, who gets to go to California? Who gets to go to the NIH? Who gets to have chemo treatments? And who gets to have 2 brain surgeries in 1 year? Really, And so that's the way that I started looking at life. It's not that I have to do this. It's I get to do it. Because there are so many people in the world and there are so many diseases and so many things happening that there is nothing someone can do. And so the fact that I get to do these things is amazing. I get to educate people about hearing loss now. I go into the public schools here in Winchester and around this area, and I have been able to teach kids about implants. I've been able to show them some sign language. I've been able to say, you know what? These things that I wear on my ears are no different than someone wearing glasses. I've had quite a few people, even teachers that work at the school, who've come to me and said, Jess, I noticed that I have hearing loss, but I'm too young. I'm too embarrassed to go and do something about this. What are your suggestions? And so it brings me the greatest joy to be able to say, you know what? I've been there. I know exactly what to do. Let me walk you through this. My story has actually been shared in the newspapers. It's been shared in medical journals. I've been interviewed by the news. Every time I get to share my story is just another way that I get to educate somebody about hearing loss. I never, ever imagined that I would ever have to deal with hearing loss. I mean, that's not something you think about like, oh, in this world, lots of people talk about cancer and diabetes, and hearing loss isn't something people talk about. And so it has been amazing that I get to use what's happened to me in order to help other people. And so I get the opportunity to encourage people. Dr. Samy will give my name to his patients. Anybody who kind of needs a little oomph, or I found one of the hardest things was because no one talks about hearing loss. When I lost my hearing, I didn't have anybody to turn to. And so I don't want that for other people. And so it's my pleasure. Like, I love talking to people. I love loving people. It's amazing that I get the opportunity to encourage people who are also going through the same thing I went through. Maybe it's not exactly the same, but we can find a connection. And so there's a verse in the Bible that I cling to. You can see on the screen, I have it tattooed on my arm. Actually, I just got it recently. And it's from Daniel chapter 3 and verse 18. And it says, even if not, even if things don't happen the way you think they're going to, it's okay, because it's still good. And so I truly believe that no matter what happens in life, no matter what God throws at me, no matter what, God has a plan, and it's a good plan. And He's used my life and used my mess to show, hey, there's a message there. And so, as I kind of wrap up myself, I want to say I want to encourage everyone who's watching this, anybody, if you're listening, just wake up every day and focus on the good things. Because if you look hard enough, even brain tumors can be positive. Life is hard. It's going to knock you down. Get back up. Refuse to quit. Trust that God has a plan. Enjoy every single second that you've been given. And definitely wear the fun socks, because they could change somebody's life. Good. So if anybody has any questions, I am an open book. I will share anything you want to know. Let's go.
Wow, that was inspirational. Your positive outlook on every aspect, every little thing that's happened to you is amazing. Unbelievable. We do have a couple of questions. The first one is amazing. Can you talk on the phone with your CI?
Yes. Actually, I'll show you guys. I have the Nucleus 7. It is the newest processor from Cochlear Americas. And it actually has there's an app on my iPhone. It's loading right now. And the Nucleus 7 Bluetooths directly from my phone into the cochlear implant. And so cell phone, yes. I honestly haven't mastered like landline phones yet. I don't really know how that works. I think if I plugged in like a phone clip, that it could probably work, but we don't have a landline phone at our house, so I don't really have a use for it.
Jeff says, I only wear fun socks. Thank you for your inspiration. Several people have said, thank you so much for sharing your story. Inspiration is almost an understatement. I wanted to know, when you were talking about, you were at NIH, which, by the way, is right down the street from our office, so it's too bad we didn't know each other then.
Man, we could have met each other.
Yes. But you also talked about Dr. Samy being at the University of Cincinnati Children's Hospital. Is that because there's more research on children who have NF2?
Yes. I think the study that I was enrolled originally in an adult study. And then the pediatric drug trial study came up at the NIH. And so they were like, well, since you're coming here anyway, it was good. I will say now, NF2 is still such a rare condition that there's still drug studies everywhere, but because I participated in the one drug study, I have to wait a time period before I can enroll in another. Is that
okay? And I was curious, your children first came to you when you had no hearing,
right?
And it sounds like they are amazing kids. They were able to adjust, to adapt to that. How has your ability to hear them changed them in any way?
Well, let me say this part. And my kids think I am the coolest mom ever. Like we'll say, over the summer, Nadia decided she wanted to play the trumpet. And so I have the ability to decide when I want to hear and when I don't want to hear. And so I allow Nadia to practice that trumpet as long as she wants. She just lets me know, Mom, I'm going to play my trumpet. And I just go off. You just... you play as long as you want. And so I think for my kids to have seen what I've been through and know that they themselves came from backgrounds in foster care that kids do not want to go through. And so I think just as a whole, our family has realized good things can happen from bad situations. Mm-hmm. And so my kids tell me all the time, they are so thankful that I can hear them. When we go to school programs and I get to hear them, that's the first thing they say, Mom, did you hear me? Like, did you really hear me this time? And I'm like, yes, I did, and so it's amazing. And it's also amazing, like I said, that I can turn it off when I need to.
Paul would like to know, do you do any hearing rehab for your ABI ear only?
I did not do any professional rehab. What I have done and what I've continued to do both with the Cochlear side and with the ABI side is I go to the library, the public library, and I will check out an audiobook and I will check out the paper copy of the book. And so I will listen to the book as I read. And so if I need to listen to a sentence 50 times to be able to understand it, then that's what I will do. And I also still have the captions on our TV at home. I use closed captioning. Just because for me to hear the sound and see it at the same time helps my brain to learn, oh, that's what I'm hearing or that's what I'm feeling. And so, yes, I mean, not professional rehabilitation of any kind, but on my own, yes.
Does the ABI have different programs available, like for different environments, raising the volume, lowering, or...
Yes, yeah. It has a remote, just like a cochlear implant does. Exactly the same. I have scan, cafe, music. It basically, externally, everything works exactly the same as a cochlear implant works. As far as volume control, on and off, battery, everything. I mean, it even looks the same as well. Looks exactly the same, but it's the internal part that's different.
Gotcha. Well, this has been a wonderful experience to hear your full story. Again, if you are interested in listening to Dr. Samy's presentation about Jess, it was recorded. It's the September 2018 webinar, so you can go back to that schedule and recordings page and play it if you'd like, as many times as you'd like.
I'll also say I think my email address is on the screen right now. If you think of a question afterwards and you're like, hey, I want to know this, please email me, because like I said, I love sharing my story. Like, I love it. I love to let people know that it's not as bad as it sounds. Like, it's awesome. And so if I can be of any help to anybody, please email me.
Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. And thank you again for presenting tonight. Thank you again to Whitney. Captions were wonderful, and I'm glad we've got this new system for captions all figured out. Thanks again, and good night.